Continuing on, we are now joined by driver number 9, Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet, Chase Elliott. Chase, fresh off a win at Kansas in exhilarating fashion. What are you looking to accomplish this weekend as we tackle the Roval?
Oh, yeah, try to get another win. I think things are, fortunately last week keeps things really simple for us. So, that's the goal. I think very capable of contending this week. We've had, good pace over the last few trips to this event, and hopefully we can replicate some of that and, keep ourselves in the mix, have a shot.
Great deal. We'll begin questions. We'll start with Zach over here on the side, then we'll go to Claire, and then Trenton.
Zach Sterniolo, NASCAR.com. Chase, during this time of year, we often hear about how mentally exhausting the playoffs are because of how laser-focused everyone has to be. Obviously, there's still pressure to perform Sunday and get another win, but having the win at Kansas in the book for the 9 team, how has that helped? Does it do anything to help ease some of that pressure or intensity for you and the 9 team, at least for 1 week?
Yeah, I definitely think it keeps your strategy really simple, especially if you are, a contender on the day and have good pace. A lot of those questions are just answered on how fast or slow you are, truthfully. So I feel like our intensity is usually pretty high. I feel like we're always really locked in on what we need to do. I don't know that the situation really changes that. We still try to show up each week and be really prepared, and I thought we had a good week of prep this week and kind of went about our business like we would have done if we hadn't won last week. So I think that's a important thing, to keep that cadence and keep your process the same, because it's not like the season's over. We still got another month. So I think our team is in a good place, and we just keep going about our business and keep our heads down, and we certainly know we have room to improve even with last week. So look to try and do some of that this week, and then certainly try and find some more next week at Vegas. Yep.
Come over here, Claire, next.
Claire B. Lang, Dialed In Journal. You obviously you feel freer potentially to race a different way coming in to this weekend. Can you race any freer? Like you said, the season still continues, but do you feel that freedom to be able to? You always go for the win, right? So what's the difference?
Yeah, I think the difference is not having a short stage, or having the ability to short stages and not feeling so pressured to run to the end if you need the points, right? I've said that a lot, but road course racing in general, this time of year, it can, in some cases, it can almost decide whether or not you have a chance to win the race, and you kind of see guys put themselves in certain buckets, and they have to have the points, and we've been there, and I get it, and you just can't afford to lose the stage points, right? So. I think that's really the biggest thing that it does more than anything. I think from my perspective behind the wheel, I'm still going to try and go and extract as much pace from the car as I can, like I would have done anyway. But yeah, just nice to not have to worry about that, that side of the fence. It's such a nice thing when you come to these places. Assuming you have good pace and all those things. Now, if we're slow and you don't have a legitimate shot to win or beat the top, runners, then maybe you do consider still running to the end of stages. If it could potentially give you a stage win, that would be an extra point, right? So I think it's how can we accumulate, number one, it's how can you win, and then number two, it's how can you accumulate the playoff points. And to me, I think the priorities go in that order.
Chase, how would you evaluate this road course and the difficulty of it? How do you take a look at it and say, man, here's how it stacks up? Yeah,
it's nothing new, at this point. We've been coming here for a number of years now. I've said really from the get-go, though, it's a place that it doesn't have a lot of flow to it. It's a really choppy road course, and it's kind of a makeshift road course, and it is. In a lot of ways, and I think having a rhythm and a flow is a really important piece of road racing. At least it is for me. And this is one of those places where it just doesn't really come natural. You kind of have to find that and create that, and it's hard to do. And I've had trips where I've been able to do that, and I've also had trips that I haven't. And it's a challenge. So I look forward to getting out on track and trying to find some of that.
We're gonna come up front here to Jordan, then we're gonna go to Trenton, then to John next.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. In the next-gen era, Las Vegas has been not one of your best tracks. Do you any reason why you think that is? when you guys run so well on other maps?
Yeah, we've crashed a lot, you know. So that's hurt for sure. Lots of crashes out at Vegas for us, really throughout the whole entirety of my career. You know, I'm trying to think through all of the scenarios. Hard to remember, but yeah. And then we've just had some bad runs there too. I thought we had some pretty good runs prior to next gen, and then kind of the inception of the next gen car. I feel like it was a pretty big step backwards. And then I thought we had a really good run there going last fall. Thought we made some nice gains last year as a whole there. Had a really, really nice run going. I was excited about just having a solid day there in the fall. Crashed. And I thought this spring was solid, more in the ballpark, not as good as we were in the fall, but certainly more competitive than some of the races I think that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
So, this deal, as it always is what have you done lately, and that narrative can be really different next week if we do our job, right?
For sure. And speaking of that, because you had the win last week, I'm not saying you're punting on this weekend, but did your prep or anything change this week and maybe focusing more forward on Las Vegas because of how critical that is?
No, truthfully, our prep work and our week was really similar to like it always is. We and I as a person and we as a team, I feel like we take things kind of week to week, and this week was really no different. I mean, we always touch on, we might touch on Vegas a little bit here or there, like if there are things that, coming off Kansas while it's fresh, something that might translate. Of course, we're gonna talk about those things, but it's nothing was any different. We just I feel like it's just an open dialogue all the time. Like it's not a we talk about everything, and I think everything's on the table. So, but us talking about Vegas and the conversations that we had were no different. Like we would have been talking about that stuff anyway. So I didn't really see where it changed.
Come over in the middle to train in John next.
Trent Warsh from FrontStretch.com. Chase, just how cool is it when fans come up to you and want you to be part of like a big moment in their lives, like that gender reveal? I saw you said it was the first time something like that's happened, but from your perspective as a race car driver, and the playoffs, and a very serious part of the season, having fans wanting you to be part of something major in their lives as well, just what are your thoughts about that and how do you feel?
Yeah, it's really cool, and I say this, but you totally do take that stuff for granted a little bit sometimes, and just it's always really important, I think, to remind yourself just the impact that you can have on someone's day, right? And just being in the position and very fortunate to be in that position. And I always try to, show appreciation for that and show as much respect as I can. I am human. I do have bad days too, right? Just like we all do. So, there are times where, you probably don't express your best and you look back and wish you had done better or done different. I'm certainly guilty of that too, but those moments are special because it is a great reminder to me that you can have that type of impact in someone's life or just in someone's day, and if you can help put a smile on somebody's face for 5 minutes, or whatever, that you made a difference. Whether you like it or not, you made a difference, and I think there's a little bit of responsibility in that. So as I've gotten a little older, I try to understand that and make sure I'm showing the respect in those situations that I would want, and I appreciate them letting me be a part of it. It was definitely a first for me, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, all those moments are unique in their own ways.
John next.
John Newby, Savage Ventures. So last night when Corey Heim crossed the finish line and took checkered flag, his team said this was a championship day for how they recovered from that wreck. You've had two different instances here where you basically survived and advanced after, hitting the wall and then also having another driver wreck you. I was curious, what do you remember about what your team did in both 2019 and 2021 to kind of recover from those two different incidents?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously did a great job. That was unfortunate. Was not his fault either. So that was, yeah. I'm sure they had some bad moments there, in that first half, and just in thoughts and how what the damage could be. But in both of my scenarios and in their scenario yesterday, there was some good fortune in what part of the car was hurt and what parts weren't. Fortunately, in all three of those scenarios, enough of the suspension was not bent, enough of the body was still intact to be able to repair it. So that's number one. If you can fix it, is it fixable? How bad is the damage? fortunately, all those situations, and for us and those two that you referenced, our car wasn't hurt that bad. And the pace here is pretty slow. And when you look at it from an aero perspective, you're not going super fast. Yes, it is a deficiency, but you can kind of patch it back together and go out there and still have a solid day with a beat up race car. So that plays a role. And then, I think the mentality aspect of it is really all the same. I feel like we're always, of the mindset and just thinking about, you're never giving in, right? So whatever situation you're faced with, that's not an option. And so it's just, you just put your head down and fight through whatever it is until it's over, until somebody says it's done. And that's just how it's going to be.
We'll stay over to Dustin, then we'll go to Doug, then we'll move to the center here.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Chase, obviously a lot of great drivers in the series and great on road courses, but when one person is winning so often at this type of discipline, I'm curious, is SVG changing the sport, or is that looking at it the wrong way because there is so much talent and there is so much competition that there's always that natural push to be better?
Yeah, there's no question he's done a fantastic job. I've always tried to give him the credit that I think he deserves for the discipline and how good he is at it, and I think that should be celebrated. I've always been a fan of, if a guy's dominating something, so what? You should, you as riders and fans, people should celebrate that, and then us as competitors should figure out how can we make ourselves better, to try and recapture where the bar has been set. So, he has certainly raised the bar, I think, in a lot of ways on the road courses. Why is that? He's a great talent, no question. He has a number of years of experience driving cars very similar to this, maybe not quite as heavy. I'm not sure what the weight of those cars are, but certainly from a transaxle perspective, and I think those cars are independent rear suspension as well, if I'm not mistaken. Might check on that, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, there are some similarities that I think that have helped him, make that transition into these cars. But then you look at his Xfinity success on that side. He's also very good in those cars, and that's nothing like he came from. And that's why I say he's a great talent, and you shouldn't take that away either. So I think you just give credit where it's due. And I think he's a good racer. He's always raced me with a lot of respect. And from my perspective, I just want to get better and try to put myself and our team in the ballpark to go up there and run with him. Yeah.
We'll move to the back over with Doug, move to the middle, and then we'll wrap with Peter.
Hey, Chase, Doug Turnbull for PRN at 5 to Go podcast. I just asked Kyle Larson this, and I'm covering turns 5, 6, and 7 there, and that's the part of the track that, of course, most recently changed there. Can you walk us through that section, what you're doing with gearing, and how challenging it is too?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I think the biggest challenge of that section is it's a little blind. As you exit the quick right to come over the hill, it's a little blind, and you end up kind of going over a hump in the road, and that can upset the car. So just kind of how you get through that quick right, whatever you decide to do with your gearing, there's a couple different options. I think you can downshift, or you can downshift early or downshift late, kind of dealer's choice. But I think more importantly, just getting the car settled to get over that rise and be able to, recapture the grip on the backside to, set up a really important apex, coming back on the big track. Obviously that leads to a long straightaway. So priorities always lend towards whatever the corner is that has the longest straightaway, right? And so, all that is kind of a setup for how you exit and take yourself to the bus stop. So it's kind of all connected.
Go ahead.
Richard Allen, motorsportsreport.net. Chase, can you compare, contrast for us racing on a road course like this that's actually adapted from an oval or like Indianapolis, as opposed to a racetrack that's a purpose-built road course like Watkins Glen or Sonoma?
Yeah, I think kind of coming back to Claire's question, really, it's just about how much of a natural flow it has. That's the only difference I see with it. And this is just a place that doesn't have a very good natural flow. You know, you go to Watkins Glen and it flows whether you like it or not. You know, that's just kind of what it is. The way the racetrack was built, certain turns set you up for the next one. And that's how a lot of road courses are that were purpose built that way. Sonoma's that way in a lot of ways. Coda is that way in a lot of ways. This place is just not, and I think that's where, coming back to finding that within yourself, creating that rhythm, creating that flow, is going to help you create repetition and lap time and be able to hit your marks and do it, throughout the entirety of a run.
We'll close with Peter.
Over here, Chase, Peter Strada with TSJ Sports. Going off of that, there's been discourse among drivers on whether this race should go back to the oval or not. If a road course had to be in the playoffs, do you have a preference for which one?
I really don't. I mean, I think the argument from that perspective has just been that this is pre-next gen. We were hungry for more road races, right? And the road course had put on a lot of excitement, and I think that's what they were after, for this event in the fall. It does seem to me like the mile-and-a-half stuff suits this car a little better than it has suited the road racing from an excitement perspective. So I think that's probably why some of those conversations have resurfaced. But I don't have a preference on where if there is a road race in the final 10, I'm good with whichever one they pick.
All right, Chase. Well, thanks for coming in today. Good luck this
Thank you.
weekend.
Yep.